I think he'd be very, very supportive. Thank you all for your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Manchin. Senator Duckworth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I have advocated consistently in this committee for combat credible air mobility and aerial refueling capabilities that need to reside not just in our active component, but that maximizes the incredible combat power of our Guard and Reserve components. And I applaud your use of total force integration, or TFI, in your concept of operations for the KC-46. Formerly associating active duty units with Guard and Reserve units truly acts as a combat multiplier for our crewed airlift squadrons. Yet I am deeply aware of the challenges classically associated with that units face as they start to employ TFI operations. It can take years to build the administrative processes and, most importantly, the trust between active and reserve components working shoulder to shoulder. General Brown, could you comment on the value of total force integration for units that provide vital capabilities like aerial refueling? And how does this concept of integrating active and reserve components, service members, impact the total Air Force's readiness, operations, and budget?
There's great value in our total force, and when I think about our airmen that both our active duty, but also our Guard and Reserve, and the experience that they've had, it's tremendous. I'll just tell you, I've watched this over a number of years. When I was Lieutenant Colonel in the Pentagon, I ran the Total Force Initiative program, operational planning team, to actually get us on a path in Hill, Langley, are a couple of examples. Vermont was another example. And what we've learned here, you kind of talked about the culture and the trust. We've come a long way in the past, I'd say it's probably been about 17 years when that occurred. So great value in the ability to work very closely with our Guard and Reserve. And it gets to a point where you almost can't tell the difference when we all go out and deploy and operate together. And that's the real benefit of the total force.
Thank you, General. I'm proud of the excellent track record of successful total force integration operations at the 126th Air Refueling Wing out of Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. They recently won their 10th Air Force Outstanding Unit Award, which is their third in a row. Very proud of them. Looking past the final fielding of the KC-46, though, the future of aerial refueling is somewhat ambiguous. We agree that the future concept of aerial refueling may look vastly different from today, and I appreciate that developing this concept of operations and the technology to enable it will take time and investment from both government and industry. And it is imperative that we are transparent in our industrial base and suppliers as to our plans. This transparency builds the trust needed to achieve our future combat capabilities and ensure that we're not left with a critical capability gap. Secretary Kendall, how are you working with our defense industrial base to provide transparency on the KCY commercial derivative tanker plans? And when do you intend to start identifying requirements for the future KC-Z tanker to ensure that the Air Force stays on track to replace our aging KC-135 fleet by the mid-2050s with the fully capable tankers required to meet the needs of U.S. Transcom and the other combatant commanders?
That's a great question, Senator Duckworth. Our plan for the tanker fleet is evolving over time, and we're having to react to what the threat's doing. At one time, we had a plan for the KC-46 to be followed by KCY, is what we call a bridge tanker, to a future KCZ, which hadn't really been defined. As we look at the requirements, and I've tried to be very direct about this, it doesn't look as necessary or as cost-effective as it once did to introduce another aircraft as KCY. So we're not sure what we're going to do about that yet. We haven't finished analyzing the requirements, but if the needle is over here at competition, it's moved back towards not necessarily having competition part of the way anyway. As far as KCZ is concerned, what we do for really a next generation, I think that's going to be threat-driven. And what I'm seeing happening with the threats is that they're trying to find creative ways to reach out further and engage our tankers at ranges at which they would once have been secure. And that's going to be a very big problem for us. We have to rethink how we support our forward tactical aircraft in particular, and what the tanker of the future looks like in a much broader sense. So that work is really just getting underway.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. As we aggressively modernize our forces, we expand We expect the services to achieve a delicate balance between funding new acquisition programs and the maintenance programs necessary to maintain today's fleet. And across the DoD, some programs offices are using FAA-certified used and refurbished parts and engines, known as used serviceable materials, into their supply chains. When implemented, this practice has demonstrated significant cost savings potential and increased availability of parts. Yet, used serviceable materials are not consistently incorporated into the supply chain for all commercial derivative platforms. And I know I've brought this up with both of you before, but General Brown, what benefit do you see used serviceable materials playing in the maintenance of our commercial derivative platforms, and how can Congress help the Air Force to expand the use of this innovative approach, allowing you to realize the potential cost savings and greater repair parts availability of used serviceable materials, and what the advantages that they offer?
But the advantages they offer, as you actually highlighted, is cost. It also opens up maybe a broader pool of parts, availability to us. I think one of the things we'll have to continue to work with the Congress, but also in terms of the Air Force, is laying out a bit of the process and culture to do that, because it's not something we've done as much typically, but it's something I think we can take advantage of here more so in the future.
Well, count me on helping you in whatever way you can to help change that.